And somehow, and I remember her face, and I know exactly who she is now.
Yeah.
But Mr. Stewart, let's see if we can have you to give us some information about your background, education, and some of your experiences, and then we'll move to Ms. Lanier, and she'll talk about exceptional education.
In my experience in the Cincinnati Public Schools, I have found and I have been very concerned in regards to young people taking full advantage of their education. And I'm a little bit concerned and very passionate about the lack of achievement, certain kinds of behavior that's non-productive within the school system, and trying to devise methods to counteract that sort of thing, where we will not have the high suspension rates that we have, in order trying to do some programs of prevention. And this is what I've been most passionate about, where young people can take education seriously. And I feel that our education system has got some way to sell education to young people, to the standpoint that they'll have a different kind of behavior in school and realize that they have to try to promote themselves to their greatest ability.
In other words, Mr. Lanier, we should move toward what you consider to be exception in education, exceptional education. Talk about that for a while for us.
Well, our district 2 years ago actually coined the phrase exceptional education as a politically correct replacement for special education, because the rainbow per se extended in terms of what students could actually receive services for education. But I think that regardless to what the diagnosis is, knowledge is power. So one thing that we're focusing on now is also doing a per se exceptional education training and opening it up, not beyond the general membership of the NAACP, but to the community as a whole, for parents and caregivers of children to understand what exceptional education is, what legal protections they have for their children, and what the proper way is to advocate. And we have a series of books through a lot of community partners that have gotten together, and I'd like to take this opportunity to present this to you on behalf of the Education Committee for the NAACP. But I think our biggest thing is each one teach one, so that there's always someone there to continue the fight for our students, because sadly, as Mr. Stewart said, if we don't reach them now, they will end up in the penal system later.
And so the NAACP is doing quite a bit in terms of education. As a matter of fact, we've had a number of other people from that same committee. Now, what about parental involvement in education as far as the NAACP is concerned?
Well, definitely, parental involvement is definitely important, Dr. Haney. That's the starting point, because when you birth a child into the world, you should naturally teach and train your child. One thing I like about what Mr. Stewart talks about, he talks in terms of character education, and it relates as to how a child acts at the home in their environment away from the school, as opposed to how they should act within the school system, and that training should be provided. Of course, he can elaborate even further on that particular method, because he's actually taught it himself, so of course he knows more about that than I do.
Well, we call that character education. Is that right, Mr. Stewart?
Yes,
well, explain that to us. You've got about 2 minutes.
Well, it's wherein that you get young people to buy into being honest, being diligent. And I don't see evidence of that in the school setting. We have to realize that children come from different worlds in the community. They come from the home world, where they have to learn different types of behaviors to survive. They come from different neighborhoods where they have to learn different types of behavior to survive. And so when they come to the school, they don't realize there's a different type of behavior that you have to survive in school and to be able to develop yourself to your fullest ability. So therefore, that behavior doesn't coincide and make a matriculation in school compatible. So therefore, we have a high rate of suspension, because that behavior that they use in the other 2 worlds doesn't work in the school. So we've got to sell a in-school type of behavior so that the child can proceed in a way that he can achieve like he should. And I think that's the reason why our achievement scores are low. This is why we're having now the Common Core debate, as to whether we should do that or not. If students buy into education and you connect it to the economics of them, every student, even though we got 75% of them that are disadvantaged, the more disadvantaged a student is, the more he's inclined to realize that almighty dollar. They must be told and preached to and uplift and inspired in school to the standpoint that they buy into education, to the standpoint that they do their very best. And so therefore, we, as far as the character education, we can use those particular personality qualities: honesty, compassion, kindness. You are tomorrow's America. Our young people have to realize that each one of us are going to retire. Some young person is going to take everybody's place, all the lawyers, all the doctors, all the nurses, and make them aware that they are tomorrow's America, and that the way that they take an attitude in school as far as how their behavior is determines directly and proportional how successful they're going to be as adults.
So, Mr. Lanier, you think that these books sort of represent what you're trying to, you and others are trying to promote throughout the metropolitan school system? We've got about a minute. Make some statements in reference to that.
Definitely, because we have parents who do not know their rights, do not know that they have rights. They trust that what the school tells them is Bible. And it truly does, to be successful, take a village to raise a child. So you have to have that active participation from all parties, and all parties have to buy into the fact that this child can be and is going to be a success story, not a statistic.
And all of those things sort of boil down to, excuse me, what the NAACP is doing to bring about quality in education, not only, well, throughout all of the metropolitan school system. Is that what we're saying?
Yes, sir.
Very good. And of course, we'll be back. We're going to take our second commercial break, and we'll be back with our audience.